Look at that.
Every light on the dash is on.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. None of those really mean anything. Entertainment purposes only. What's going on, everybody? How you doing? So I got the Monte Carlo out. It's running fine. It has an oil leak, I've discovered. Should have fixed it before. I did not. That's okay. I can get to it through the tire. I have a brake job to do. It kind of has to get done. 2006 Toyota RAV4 Sport V6 all-wheel drive front brakes. I did the back brakes last week. Started the fronts and ran into an issue with the calipers and the caliper brackets. Problem is with this vehicle, I found the brackets for a bunch of different vehicles, and some of them might have fit. You could have cross-referenced them or whatever, but I just decided to wait and go online and get them from Rock Auto. Rock Auto has them affordable. Everybody wanted to buy the caliper and the bracket together. They won't separate them. Well, most vehicles you can get just the bracket, or just, I know I can go to the junkyard or whatever, but what am I getting there? The same thing, it's rusted. This thing's got 300,000 million miles on it. So I bit the bullet and bought the calipers and the brakes. The calipers at the parts store, they had a core charge where it ended up being $80 a piece. I'm not going to put $160 into this vehicle. So the brackets on these, I'll explain. Let me show you. This is the caliper. This is the bracket. These are the pins that hold the caliper to the bracket. This separates from here to here. Well, this needs to move. You can see how that moving a little bit. As the brakes are being adjusted, it can slide in and out. I should be able to pull that apart. But as the brake pads wear, this needs to be able to move to adjust for the brake pads coming in and getting smaller, and as the rotors wearing and everything. Well, when they're locked up like that, and that's typically what happens, especially on these cars that have, literally this one has over 310,000 miles on it. You can't kill a Toyota. These things go forever, literally. But they're bad. So just to buy this bracket, unfindable. So you have to get the calipers. Well, the calipers are fine. Now that I've bought these, a lot cheaper than anybody around here has them, I'm not going to use this, and this is the expensive part. I'm going to put this back in the box, in the bag, and put it on the shelf, so when this thing's got 800,000 miles on it and a caliper does go bad, I can change it. But when you change a caliper, you have to break the brake line loose, and then you have to bleed everything. I don't feel like bleeding brakes, especially I don't feel like changing calipers and bleeding the whole system when all I need is this part, and these are fine, what's on the car. So I'm going to hang on to these, and if I need them later or for another RAV4 or whatever it can cross-reference to, I've got them. So when I pulled these off originally and started looking at them, the pads really are not that worn. They're not horrible. But when you would hit the brake, you had solid pedal, but you just didn't really stop, because these rotors are shiny and slick, and I'm sure the pads are the same. So I'm just changing rotors, and we're missing a screw. You're supposed to hold that together. I don't care. I think that's all right. It's been like that for a long time apparently. So I got to pull the bracket and the caliper, get rid of the bracket, put the new bracket in, new rotor, new pads. Easy peasy, right? We'll see. I probably don't have to, but I'm going to. It's going to make it easier on me if I take these off and remove the caliper while it's on the vehicle rather than wrestling with them once I take the bracket loose. The bracket has a couple big hosses back here, probably, I'm going to guess, a 15, 16 millimeter. This is a 13 millimeter. There's two of them, one on the bottom, one on the top. Pretty easy. Actually, it's a 14 millimeter there. They're pretty short bolts. Come out relatively easy. Every once in a while, the slide pin might start turning on you. Then you have to get 17, I think is what it is on you to hold into place. That's a 17. And that'll hold the slide pin to keep it from turning. In my case, the slide pin won't turn on the bottom. And I actually had one off and I attempted to turn it loose and it broke off on me, so it was time to change. Never let this just hang from the hose. Find a place to set it up there nice and easy. Or hang it from a wire up on the coilover. Now these brackets, I have had people ask me to help them because they had a noise in the front end and this bracket was busted loose and down on the rotor, bouncing, rattling. They're like, what's going on? So they do, when you buy the new bolts, they do come with Loctite on them. Sometimes they don't have Loctite on the bolts from the factory, apparently. This one's pretty tight, so every once in a while they're rough to get loose. I'm gonna get a grip. There goes the car. Yeah. They're a little tight, takes a little meat, but you'll get it. Could put the impact on it, but why? All right, brackets off. You see the pads really, there's a lot of left on them, but they're shiny and they weren't hitting right. Nothing, that one was worn a little bit more. Not too bad. And now this guy, they're supposed to be, well now see, there is no, these two screw holes are for a little set screw to go in there and hold it onto the axle. But there's no hole in the axle, so I'm just assuming this is a universal thing. That rotor's really not too bad either. It's just really shined up and it's got a couple of gouges in it, so I'm just going to change it. So the new rotor, see the hash marks on here, and it's not slick and shiny, and that's what you want. You don't want this thing to glaze over. And it does have the same screw holes in it. However, the axle does not. So this vehicle didn't come with that, and it doesn't really matter because the lug nuts and the wheel hold all that on. So now I'm not changing the caliper. I'm just going to squeeze that back. I'm going to get the new bracket put on, caliper with new pads, and we're done. So, like I said, I had to buy the caliper with the bracket. I don't need the caliper. I'm going to just keep it because I bought it. And it just separates back here. leave that on while I break this one loose. Oh yeah, say ya! What up? And see what I mean by taking this apart while it was still on the car? Because now you got it wiggling around and I don't have a vise. I've got vices, but not a vise. There we go. Almost. Oh, see, now that's where we need our 17. And if it looks like this is fitting under funny, it kind of is, because this is old Met wrench. And if you've never seen the Met wrench, they're pretty cool. It'll fit standard or metric. And so it's a 17/11/16. But on some of them it fits loose. But that's because it's got these little lobes that catch the side of the bolt rather than the corners. I've used them a lot on different applications. When something's kind of rounded off, this actually will take a rounded off screw or rounded off bolt out. They work pretty good. I use them a lot, and they're also a little bit thinner. On this application, you occasionally need that. This one's not so bad, but every once in a while, when you tighten this up, this squeezes on the wrench and gets it pinched in between this little lip here and this caliper. Then once you get it tightened up, you can't get it off. Well, this one's thin enough that it actually stays in there and it doesn't cause a problem. But yeah, I'd kind of recommend the Met wrench if you're looking for a good set of wrenches. I think I even had the sockets too, and I do have the sockets actually. I know I do. They're kind of cool, you know, for certain applications. But see, like that, they get hung up on there occasionally. Let me show you. If you look at how it works, it looks way too big, but it catches it, and it won't let go, and it'll catch. It doesn't round the corners off on it. Pretty good deal. One thing that I always do, it's just kind of become a habit for me. When I'm squeezing the caliper back, well, that pushes fluid back into the reservoir, the master cylinder reservoir. I always just take the cap off. Now this one, obviously, I don't think it's a big deal because it probably would have just popped off. I have had them like on an old truck. I think it's only happened to me one time, but it just, after that, it was so costly and so much more work. Squeezing that caliper, I built up so much pressure that I blew the master cylinder apart, the reservoir, and I had to replace that, which wasn't inexpensive by any means, and it was also a lot more work because now I got to re-bleed the whole system. So I always just became a habit to always remove that cap off of there. And plus, you want to watch because you take this thing in for an oil change. A lot of them, it's a courtesy where they top off all your fluids, and they top off this. I really don't understand why, because if you go to get a brake job done and you squeeze those calipers back, fluid ends up going all over the place because there's too much fluid in there now. So you'll see. Look, I mean, this is kind of low, but that's because the pads are wore, the rotors wore. Now, when I squeeze all them back, this fluid level is going to come up. And if you keep topping it off and the brakes are worn, now you got too much fluid in there. Where are you going to put it? And so here's why I'm changing the bracket. You see these slide bolts? They need to be able to move for when your pads and your rotor's wearing. They need to make adjustments to take up space or give you more space. This one, the old one, actually one of them, this one still moves slightly. Usually what I'll do is when they do move and I don't have to change these, I'll pull them out. They'll come off of this rubber, and then you just put a little grease on them and clean that out and get some grease back in there, and then they're back to good. But this one, well, she locked up. There's no turning. And there's no sliding. So putting a new rotor and the new pads on, you're getting a lot more thickness. This needs to move to take up that space. Otherwise, you're driving around with your brakes perpetually on, and you'll overheat everything. You won't be able to go. You let off the gas and it'll try and stop you. So this is junk. I broke one off. on the other brake on this vehicle, and I tried drilling it out, and you can buy just the slide bolts, which are pretty cheap, because I didn't want to spend the $90 to replace everything. So I just went ahead and now I'm changing them all. And this, it's got the threads in it, in the bracket, so the bracket goes behind. Like that. I don't know if you can see it. Bracket goes in behind like that. The bolt will go through here into the bracket. Something like that. Clean these up a little bit. Just a little bit of Loctite on them, not much. Just enough. Happy little Loctite. All right, got that one started a little bit. Click. Click. Now I just always throw an old brake pad in here. Get a good C-clamp. And squeeze that guy back nice and gentle. You don't want to go too fast. Start blowing things apart. Make sure everything's going back square. Like I said, these calipers are fine. No sense in changing them. So once you crack this brake line loose, now you've introduced air into the system and you have to bleed everything. And that's not fun. No, it's not. All right, easy peasy. New clips. I call them, well, slider clips, whatever. If you get confused on how they go, just look at the old setup. If you're changing out brakes and not changing this, just take a picture of them. If you're like me and you're forgetful. There you go. Just like that. I always throw a little bit, just a touch of grease on the sides. Nothing too much. Just so they don't bind up. You can use, I use grease. You probably shouldn't, but I do. There is stuff that you can buy at the store. It's supposed to be in here. I've never had a problem with just using a little bit of wheel bearing grease, the red stuff, you know. Caliper back on. And this is where it comes in handy, like you need to be able to push that guy in to get this all set in there nice and loose. And these, pretty much tighten them up till they stop. Click. Click. There we go. And now that I've squeezed that back, see how loose this is? Keep that in mind if you ever do this and you start your vehicle up and start to go. Remember to pump your brakes a few times and get this tightened up, or you won't have any brakes for the first few 100 feet or so. And there's a couple of things to keep in mind. These are side specific, so this is left side. Other one's right side, it's already on. So I used to always say left and right. I don't know. Is it the car's left, or if I'm looking at the car and what it is I used to always just say passenger side and driver side. If you're sitting in the driver's seat looking forward, or if you are the car, this is the left, that is the right. Left, left. Just keep that in mind. It's pretty important. And now that I've squeezed the calipers back, look where the fluid level's at. So most of the time when I'm doing this, I always end up with way too much fluid in here and I can't even squeeze the calipers anymore. So I got a little tip. I always just keep like an old medicine syringe or whatever. Make sure it's clean. You don't want any garbage getting down in there. And then you just stick her in there and suck out the fluid. Be careful that you don't drip it on any surfaces because brake fluid's pretty nasty stuff. It'll eat the paint off of your car. And then you just go to a, and squirt it in there. And then one other thing, a note from Auto Shack, where I got these parts. Well, I got them from Rock Auto. This is pretty important stuff, so I'm going to take a picture of it and just put it on there, and then you can look at it if you're interested.
So this basically means we can practice our 0 to 60 to 0 times.
Yeah, pretty much. Sounds like a good time. Let's do it.
Woohoo! Yeah!
Okay, so we're ready. Brakes are done. Always remember, you don't have any brakes when you first do this, so you need to get them pumped up. Look at that.
Every light on the dash is on.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. None of those really mean anything. Entertainment purposes only. At least I'm only 3 or 4 more miles away. Pretty awesome sound. Do you hear that sound? Nice day for a drive. Oh, 10 miles an hour, too fast. 5 is better. It gets a little quieter at 5. Try not to hit bumps. Try not to hit bumps. Definitely some rapid unscheduled disassembly going on right now. That drive shaft's down there flipping around like that windy guy that stands in front of the car lot selling cars and flailing his arms around. I guess I am super lucky that this is an all-wheel drive vehicle. So the front end's pulling me home, the back end's just kind of hanging in there, making noise, complaining about the whole situation. I guess I could just go out there and live now, leave the car here and start a new life. This is taking forever. Should I get a puppy? About 7 miles an hour is as much as she likes. So yeah, took the this thing, Toyota RAV4 Sport, fixed the brakes, and after you fix the brakes, the drive shaft breaks. It was only about 15 miles away, and I had to put that up there, and luckily she had this little bitty bungee cord, so I strapped it across like that, just kind of let it flop around. Goodness, thank God that it's front wheel drive car. So, but if you look at those bolts, this one here and this one here, I already started drilling on this one. These are clean, but these are rusted. I'm gonna say those have been broke for a little over 1,000 years. This one and this one. Now I get to drill these out, and at least I clean this up real nice and clean this side up of this thing real nice, I'm sure. Bouncing around. Yeah. So here we go. I thought I was done. I was going to take the Camaro, go riding around a little bit, but now I'm going to keep working on this. So, after about 2 days and 26 hours, 63 minutes and 97 seconds, and that, I pretty much knocked it out of the park. Broken bits. A bent bit. I've never bent a bit, but look at what? And I don't even know where this came from. That's one of them things. I hate those things. So, a broken screwdriver. Yeah, I nailed it. Actually, as of 2 days after it's been repaired, it's still going. It's gone like at least 12 miles. So we'll see.
Oh, wow. Good job, stupid.
Thanks. And so here it is. It's probably not going to work. It's most likely going to fail after the first couple of miles or once it gets out of the driveway. That red stuff is not blood. It's not trans fluid. It's not gear oil. It's Loctite. I basically glued it on. Now it's coming out of the holes. I put a lot of Loctite. Grade 8 bolts. Retapped and threaded, and it's going to fall off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of wire or a strap or something and go from here to here or somewhere and just hang it there just to catch it when it falls. It is what it is. There's nothing else I could do. We'll see what happens. Maybe it won't work. Maybe it's not going to work at all. Chances are it won't.